The Morning X with Barnes and Leslie.
It's not the murder, it's the marriage. That's what keeps people watching. These stories are not about crime as much as
the luminol and the DNA.
It's about relationships, and that's why people are drawn in. That's what keeps you watching.
99X, it's Barnes and Leslie. We're hanging out with Josh Mankiewicz from Dateline. Not only my favorite show, but my favorite franchise.
Wow.
I just freaking love it. All right, let's get these callers in. They've been waiting on the line. If you'd like to talk Dateline or true crime, this is where you call. Hey, Morning X, who is this?
Hey, this is Jen.
Hey, Jen, you're on with Josh Mankiewicz from Dateline.
Hi, Jen.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. You're like my Friday night ritual, man.
Same.
Thank you. So you actually sit there and watch the show live on television?
Yes, sir. Bottle of wine in hand, Friday night. You and me, man.
Yeah, you are my kind of television viewer, because a lot of people record it, watch it over the weekend.
I do.
And some people just listen to the podcast and never actually see the TV story, which we spend a lot of time on those pictures, so it's better if you watch.
She's got a date with Dateline every Friday night.
Yeah.
I sure do.
What's your question?
Oh, Josh, I have always wondered, is there like a particular case that you guys have not covered that you wish that you would? Like one that you're like, man, we really got to cover this one.
Well, usually when we cover something or don't cover something, it's a function of things beyond that we want to. Like there's a story in California that we very much wanted to cover about a family that went missing, and then it looked like they had they'd run away or they'd been abducted, and then it turned out they'd been killed. And they hadn't actually run away at all. And we wanted to do that, but the people involved in the story, the family that was left over, they wanted to get paid.
Oh.
We don't do that. We can't pay anybody. So, one, because in journalism, when you pay somebody, it runs the risk that it's going to change their story. And two, because we're incredibly cheap. So those two things combined to make that impossible. We don't pay for stories. So, in all seriousness, we don't. And so that we weren't able to do that. That's usually what happens. I mean, usually the stories that we don't cover are ones that we wanted to cover, and either somebody got there first and somebody else and locked up the family exclusively, or for whatever reason, they don't want to talk. And if families don't want to talk, we can do it without the cops. We can do it without the prosecutors. We can sometimes do it without the victim's best friends. We can't really do it without the family.
Yeah.
So if they don't want to participate, then sometimes there's no story.
Hey, thank you very much for calling. We appreciate it.
It's a great question.
Yeah. Josh Mankiewicz from Dateline is here, 470-741-4999.
Hey, Morning X, who's this?
Sarah Hannah.
Hi, Sarah.
Excellent. Listen, you're on with the one and only Josh Mankiewicz. You had a question for him?
I'm so excited, not to fangirl, but I've been watching Dateline and you on it for many, many years, so it's great to be speaking with you.
Which we appreciate, so thank you. Yes.
Okay. I'm sure you get that all the time. My question is, how on earth do you remain so diplomatic when you're speaking to someone who is so clearly guilty of the crime?
Okay, so, before I was at Dateline, which is back, there actually was no television then. It was everything was steam operated, and many of us thought that the car was going to replace the horse, which was a very exciting prospect. I was a political reporter for most of my career, and interviewing either accused or convicted murderers is not terribly different from the skills that you need when you're interviewing politicians, which is they're probably lying. They're probably lying to you. They're all telling you. Got to remember, by the time these guys, it's usually guys, sit down across from us, they are on their best behavior. They're not showing you the side of themselves that landed them in the slammer. Their whole thing is, oh no, this is not me. The person they described in court, that's not me. That's somebody else. And my ex-wife's family and the cops and the prosecutors, they're all in league with each other to try to convict me and paint me as this terrible person. And I'm perfectly willing to listen to that. that doesn't mean that I will not be poking holes in it the minute they finish speaking. So that's why. And the other thing, of course, is that if you ask a lot of members of the Dateline audience, my face kind of betrays.
I was just going to say, you squint your eyes and you are coming in. I can totally tell when you're going to do it.
Apparently, I'm not that good at disguising when I don't believe somebody, but yeah, that's the answer. Is that I'm willing to listen to your story because not everybody who's accused is guilty. Not everybody who's convicted is guilty. Some of them have a reasonable story, but usually they don't have a reasonable story, and so I kind of look at them and then
funny.
I ask them some questions.
Sarah, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks. We'll see you later. That is so funny. I was just thinking that as you said it. Hey, Morning X, who is this?
This is Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie. You're on with Josh Mankiewicz from Dateline.
Awesome. Hi, Josh. I had two real quick questions. And we're huge fans in my house. I just wanted to let you know. Do you ever suggest stories or do they bring everything to y'all? And, do you get to pick what you cover?
Oh, good questions.
Yes. Okay, so here's how that works. Yes, I suggest stories. Occasionally they say yes. Back in 2005, I did a story for Dateline all those years ago, which helped start a discussion that's going on today still, which is who gets covered on television. And back then, we were covering endlessly stories of every attractive missing white woman there was. And so were all the other memes magazines, and so were all the morning shows, and so were all the cable networks. And we weren't just doing them once. We're doing them again and again and again and again while we ignored almost all the stories of anybody else who was missing. Now, most of the missing people in the United States are not attractive young white women. Like, most of them are men. Although that's gotten closer over the years. And a huge percentage are indigenous or African American. But we weren't covering any of those people. So I decided to do a story about Tamika, who was missing and whose family had tried to get her on Dateline and on all the other shows, and they couldn't even get their calls returned. And from that story came something called the Black and Missing Foundation, which seeks to increase awareness of those kind of cases and also sort of spur both journalism and law enforcement to spend more time and effort on that kind of case as opposed to everything else. Stephanie, to answer your question, yes, I do get to propose things. That was one of my favorite stories, which was my idea. And sometimes, a lot of times they bring stories to you and you do it because either everybody else is busy because there's only 4 of us and sometimes we're all slammed. So sometimes they say, you have to go to Kansas City next week because the trial's ending and there's nobody else can do it. And then sometimes it's somebody that you've worked with before, producers or something like that, and you end up doing it. So you have some say over what you do. We all 4 of us do. You can't say yes to everything. You shouldn't say no to everything because then you become kind of a pain. So it's something in the middle.
That's wild. Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate you listening.
And Stephanie, thanks for being a fan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and watching.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.
Be sure and check out Dateline, of course, Friday night. You've got it on Saturday night. Longest-running primetime series in NBC history. Josh Mankiewicz. The Steve Show is next. If you missed any of that, you can catch it on our podcast, of course, wherever you get podcasts. Steve is next. We'll see ya. I'm Barnes. That's Leslie. This is 99X.